How about claim number 4? Claim number 4 says that the Gospels are so different in detail that they must be deemed in error at numerous points and cannot be viewed as a divinely inspired, right? So they're so different. The details are so different that obviously somebody got something wrong.
Yeah,
right?
This has been a historic claim within Christianity, and it seems most recently you have certain scholars who I don't question their faith. They are avid believers, strong believers, and know the Bible back and forward better than I do, but who, for the sake of either having a seat at the table or because it's just really hard, kind of divorce themselves from this narrative. And that's not always been a historical Christianity narrative. Now you can you cannot talk about it and say this isn't the scope of my talking. And so the argument from silence should be used there for scholars, but there are some scholars who say, I just don't go based on that perspective. And so we would have issues with that as well.
Right.
But here our authors talk about that no serious scholar denies that the Gospels at times differ in details. But once again, differences do not mean contradictions. This isn't an A or not A. Jason Lowell went through 420 of them and didn't find one. So, for one, Ehrman inadequately appreciates the nature of Jesus' teaching ministry. And that's very true, especially if you watch his debates. This is part of his presentation that he gives here. Jesus would travel from town to town, teaching several of the same lessons and parables in slightly different ways. If he taught a lesson once, he had no doubt would have taught the same lesson on several other occasions. In fact, I think the longest one is the Sermon on the Mount series, and that's like 20 minutes to just read through it.
Yeah, or less.
And to say that, well, that's the only time he said that. It seems weird for a teacher who's going around from town to town
and preach for almost 3 years.
Right. And so we can kind of compare this to the Gettysburg Address, right? Well, we know what the Gettysburg Address was. Well, yeah, except it was written on pretty much the back of an envelope, right? And it was sent out in different ways to different people who heard it at different times from different people. So which one's the Gettysburg Address, right? The original, back to the sources. So here, to say that Jesus didn't reteach things or taught things 100% the same way all the time, I mean, we don't do that.
Right.
Right. So this not only helped carve the sayings and lessons in the minds of the disciples, because they probably heard it over and over again.
Right, yeah.
It also meant that there were some variations in how Jesus told particular stories or truths, taught certain truths. And again, we should let the authors be free within the scope of being truthful.
Yeah, good. So Jesus also likely taught different moral lessons using similar language and similar words, right? For example, Ehrman implies that Matthew 12:30 and Mark 9:40 are contradictory because in Matthew, Jesus says, anyone who is not with me is against me, while in Mark, Jesus says, whoever is not against us is for us, right? So Ehrman suggests that one of the evangelists simply just got confused.
Yeah.
However, Luke apparently believed that Jesus made both of these remarks at different times and did not view them as contradictory since he included both of them in the Gospel of Luke, right? Luke 9:50 and Luke 11:23.
Right, and does this create a giant thing that churches are splitting over? That people are raking their nails down their face and tearing their clothes because all of a sudden the entire Bible and their entire faith was built upon this difference, and now it's done.
Yeah.
Probably not. This seems to be making a little bit more than what it's worth. What is more is the context of Matthew 12:30 and Mark 9:40 are different. In Matthew, Jesus is aiming his comments at those who attribute Jesus' ministry to evil forces. In Mark, Jesus is acknowledging the legitimacy of someone who is casting out demons in Jesus' name. Two vastly different audiences there.
Yeah.
In light of the respective context, the most natural explanation is that Jesus uttered the two statements at different times. While the message conveyed by these two sayings are not identical, neither is it contradictory.
Yeah, they're not contradictory.
Yeah. So, using a common phrase in different applications is essentially what you would find in normal talking. Ehrman has once again set the Gospels up for failure by assuming with very narrow and rigid expectations this kind of fundamental view that we looked at in previous chapters, what the Gospels should look like, and then criticizing them for not meeting his unreasonable and anachronistic, there we go, I knew that word, standards.
Yeah. So he sets up these unreasonable standards, right? And then when the Bible doesn't meet them, he says, see, it's wrong. Right. It's contradictory. Well, no, right? Yeah. Look at your standards again, right? Yeah. Good.